Welcome to episode 1 of the J&J Podcast, a father and son duo. I'm Jamie.
This is Jameson.
We say all the things that everyone wants to say, but they don't have anyone to say it for them. So, with that, let's lock in and get started.
Yes, sir. I'm excited for today. First on the docket is going to be college football. And I know we discussed this a couple of days ago, but college football, there was an insane weekend of games. But really the game that stood out to me was definitely the Baylor-Colorado game. And what was crazy was, I was watching that game at first. I remember it was 24-17. And the way things were looking, I was like, man, I really, of course, I'm rooting for Colorado, but I genuinely didn't actually think they were going to win. But seeing them close out the game like that was absolutely insane. And I'm just going to go and say it now, and I'll go and get to your thoughts in a second, sir. But Travis Hunter right now is at the top of the Heisman, Heisman watch to me. Like, if that man does not win the Heisman right now, I would be genuinely shocked. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen somebody like this in college football playing both sides of the ball, just being, at as high of a level as he's playing too. Like, he's arguably a top 3 cornerback right now in all of college football, and wide receiver wise, he's definitely, if not the best wide receiver in the nation. I mean, because you have other names like Jeremiah Smith from Alabama, but he's definitely top 3 for both positions, wide receiver and cornerback. So, want to also get your thoughts on it too, sir.
Yeah, I have to agree. He's probably, in my opinion, he's probably the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
I will slightly disagree with you on one thing. We have seen something similar to this before, not quite like it,
Yeah.
but similar to this before. And interestingly enough, it's actually his head coach.
Yeah.
Dion didn't play wide receiver all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but he certainly was on special teams. They used him for trick plays. There have been other guys who've done, small, similar things like that. But Dion was actually just as good. If the Cowboys, if the 49ers had actually played him more on offense, I think he could have been a really, really good wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because he was just faster than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't necessarily the route running per se, but he was faster. He was a lot more elusive
Yeah.
than most of the wide receivers that he played with, and that's part of the reason why he was so good as a cornerback. He had skills on both sides of the ball. But to your point about Travis Hunter, yeah, he's special, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on whether or not you think he'll actually be able to play both sides of the ball once he gets to the NFL.
It's crazy you said that, because I was literally just about to ask you the same thing, because I know that's been like a major topic of discussion, on like ESPN, social media. But realistically, I think honestly, Travis Hunter is going to be better suited as a wide receiver in the National Football League, especially too. I thought about it from this perspective. Wide receivers get paid more money than cornerbacks, and honestly, more than likely too, because if he's gonna be the number 1 pick in the draft, like, he's gonna go to a team like the Panthers, or a team like that, or like the Giants, a team like that that's like, doesn't have the best roster. So I feel like he's gonna be better suited playing wide receiver in the NFL, but I could easily see him playing cornerback as well. The only thing is, though, at the NFL level, they're just gonna have to manage like how many plays that, like, right now for Colorado, like, he barely takes plays off, and I just don't see that translating, to the actual NFL, especially like, he's playing against men now, but like, once you get to that NFL level, it's grown men, and then on top of that, it's even more of a physical game once you actually get to the league. So of course, I think his talent can, translate on both sides of the ball, but realistically, I think if he does end up playing both sides, they're just gonna have to manage, how many plays that he actually is out there for. So, but I think Travis Hunter's really like a generational talent. Like, I mean, I know you mentioned Deion Sanders, and I know some people try to compare, what Travis Hunter's doing also to like Desmond Howard when he was at Michigan. But still, it's just like, even on top of that, it's like Travis Hunter, he's a monster. Like, even against Baylor, 130 receiving yards, and then literally he made the game-winning play at the end, like that forced fumble, actually poking the ball out from the Baylor running back. It's just like plays like that. It's like he's making them week to week, and it's just like he continues to get better. So we'll see. I honestly, like, to actually go back to like, your original question, I do think that, of course, it can translate, but just, more limited, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean he's an elite athlete. There's
Yeah.
no doubt, and I think that yes, you're playing with grown men
Hmm.
on Sundays,
Yeah.
and he's making an impact on both sides of the ball. Now, the back to the point that I was making about Dion, I actually think he's just as good on one side as he is on the other side.
Yeah.
Um, Dion could have been, like I said before, could have been as good, I think, on the offensive side.
Hmm.
Certainly when he was returning, kicks, punt returns, kick returns, that was insane.
Of
But I
course.
think Hunter is actually just as good on one side as he is the other. He's elite regardless,
Yeah.
but it will have to be now. Good corners are not easy to come by in the
Facts.
NFL.
Hmm.
And so when you have a really, really good corner like he is, I
Yeah.
mean, to your point, he made the game saving play. And he is literally a shutdown corner.
Yeah.
Those are few and far between,
Hmm.
the Jalen Ramseys of the world.
Yeah.
In Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
When you got guys like that, he has that kind of ability.
Hmm.
I just think that you can't waste um, the fact that he has offensive talent as well
Yeah.
once he gets to the league. We agree
Hmm.
overall but one area that I do think that he'll be able to really take advantage of that skill set is for them to use him. I'll say this very quickly, kind of like um, what's his name for the 49ers.
Oh, Debo Samuel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think he has that kind of ability where it's like, okay, he's an athlete. You
Yeah.
just got to find places to use him. So I
Yeah.
think he's that kind of athlete that you'll use him more offensively, but I also think he can really become a shutdown corner.
Honestly, too, and I just thought about this too to add to your point. I think also something I'll give him the edge at wide receivers, like you said, they can not only use him like the 49ers and Shanahan, how they use Debo Samuel, but what's special about Travis Hunter is he's 6'3" and he's also a vertical threat. Like most of his big plays this year have been, just one on one, like just burning man coverage. So like I think that also gives him the edge over somebody like Dion. Like not only can, he also run, option plays. You can put Travis Hunter like a screenplay, but he can also just moss people and like just go vertical like a Justin Jefferson or like a DJ Moore, or like a Nico Collins. So, like I said, I'll be honest, the past like 10 years, the number one pick has always been a quarterback. But I feel like Travis Hunter can actually like kind of transcend it and just, get it back to the point of not always picking a quarterback with the first pick, because as we've seen, sometimes these higher drafted quarterbacks do not pan out. So it's just like, for example, if I'm like the Carolina Panthers or like the New York Giants, of course, both of those teams have like quarterback needs, but it's like if Travis Hunter is there at the number one pick, I don't know how you pass up on that, man. Like I feel like if you do, it's like that's gonna be an all time regret for like whatever franchise gets that number one pick. So we'll see what happens. And then also
Well,
another, yeah, my fault. You go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, shifting to while we're talking about that actual team and
Hmm.
talking about quarterbacks and their draftability,
Yeah.
um, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Shador Sanders is special.
Yeah, he is.
And, I'm just going to say it. He should be the number one quarterback drafted.
I agree.
It is what it is. I know that there's a lot always controversy around, he's Deion's son and he's cocky and
Yep.
all this other kind of stuff. Bottom line is the kid has talent. The
Yeah.
kid is special. Okay, the first Hail Mary that
Will
his wide
Shepard
receiver
drop.
didn't
Yeah.
get, that Will Shepard dropped. Okay, you can say that was luck.
Yeah.
To do it twice,
Yeah.
and to actually score on the second one, no, that's talent.
Yep.
That is skill. That is special. And so, whether people want to admit it or not, whether they like Dion or not, the bottom line is this kid is special.
Yep.
He has trained with the likes of Tom Brady, and it shows.
Yep.
Because what I think a lot of people will be surprised by is he's not necessarily a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
He will sit in the pocket. He literally wants to sit in the pocket
Hmm.
because that's where he's most deadly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw that out there. I think he should be the number one quarterback drafted. Your
I agree.
thoughts?
Honestly, no, I completely agree. And then also something I've noticed about Shador is just like that'll already translate to the next level is his poise and his demeanor. Like, I honestly, he reminds me a lot of like how C.J. Stroud was. It's just like I've always said this. Of course, C.J. Stroud has like the arm talent. He has all the intangibles you want in a quarterback. But it's like he's the type of guy where like when he walks in a room, you're like that guy has it, whatever it is. And it's like Shador has that. And it's also too from a marketing perspective too. It's just like you've seen how, of course, I mean, Deion Sanders plays a big role in this, but literally Shador and Travis Hunter like pack out every stadium they're in, and it's like Shador is like he's also that face of the franchise type of player that you want. I mean, think about it. He's a good dude. He stays out of the media, of course, for like for the right reason. Like, of course, media members are going to talk about him because him and Deion and the whole that being his son. But think about it. He's had no drama, like nothing like that. He seems like a really good young man. I feel like honestly too. I'm not saying he's gonna come into the league and just automatically be a superstar, but and a lot of it's gonna boil down to him getting drafted to the right situation too. Because my prayer for him is similar to like what what's been happening with Bryce Young. That he has all the talent in the world, but I just hope he gets the right system. Like for example, the New York Giants right now they have some solid weapons. Like their defense, they have Brian Burns, Thibodeau. I mean, even now, I know we're gonna get to like NFL talk later, but like you see what Malik Neighbors did yesterday, and they're doing that with Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback, but it's like you put somebody like Shador in there, it can just take that franchise to the next level. Like actually have the Giants back in playoff contention again. So overall, yeah, I completely agree with you. Of course, there's some other names like the Georgia quarterback, Quinn Ewers from Texas. Like there's other names, but I just feel like. Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of other names. I just feel like Shador Sanders, he just has something about him where it's like I completely agree. He should be the first quarterback taken in next year's draft, but we'll see what happens. And honestly, like now that you bring it up, it could be a blessing in disguise if he drops. Like we've seen it happen before. Like it could be similar to what happened to Lamar Jackson. The Ravens got him literally the last pick of the first round. You see it. You see how that's translated. So we'll see what happens, but. To reiterate your point, I completely agree. He should be the first quarterback selected, but you know how the NFL goes. We'll see what happens.
For sure.
And then switching gears, and I know another game we kind of wanted to talk about was because we're Carolina fans is the Carolina James Madison game. That was that was tough to watch. Your thoughts?
Okay, so all right, so. Full transparency, I'm a Tar Heel. I'm a Carolina grad.
Yeah.
And that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you guys remember, I said we will say some of the things that others want to say, but we're going to say them. The Mac Brown era may need to be over.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't mind if he finishes out the season. But of course, I'm also speaking from a biased position.
Of course.
I'm also speaking from my heart because that was hard to watch. How in the world did we lose to James Madison by 20 points? Because they scored 70 points. 70 points. That is ridiculous. James Madison is a group of 5 team. That's who they played. We played a group of, I'm saying we, because I'm a Tar Heel.
Yeah.
We played a group of 5 team, and they dropped 70 on our head. 7-0. By the way, there was talk about, Jacoby Criswell this and Connor Harrell that. Jacoby Criswell did his job.
Yeah.
He actually threw for the 3rd most yards by a UNC quarterback.
Yeah.
The dude threw for 470-some yards, 3 touchdowns. We couldn't stop a cold. Yeah. We couldn't stop a nose from running. This is ridiculous. And it's been a problem during the Mac Brown era. Mm-hmm. But both Mac Brown the first time and Mac Brown 2.0.
Yeah.
Listen, at this point, I don't know what defensive coordinator he could hire to fix that. Yeah. It's almost like it's a curse. Mm-hmm. And so, granted, people are saying don't overreact. It's just one game. To James Madison. Come on, man. I mean, okay, I'll pass it along to you before I get emotional. But the last thing that I will say is, if we lose to Duke like that,
that's nasty work.
He may need to listen. And I'm trying to remember. I think the game may be in Durham.
Yeah.
Mac Brown has a home in Chapel Hill. He might as well go ahead and get a hotel room in Durham on Saturday. I'm just being. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll be brief on it too, because I completely agree with where you're coming from. Because I mean, here's another thing that kind of concerned me about it. It's like a lot of times the fact that we allow 70 points is already one thing, but what that showed me too is like I don't know the exact stat, but we clearly didn't control time of possession either, because how do we have arguably a top 3 to 5 running back in the entire nation on Marion Hampton, and we first off couldn't establish a run, and then it's like if you do establish a run, that frees up, makes the game even easier for your quarterback, and it limits the time of possession. They can't put up 70 points if they don't have the ball, a lot of times. And one thing we also noticed was like watching that game, like you said, we couldn't stop a dead fly. It seemed like anytime James Madison got the ball, they scored. And literally, they scored all touchdowns. They scored 10 tutties. That is absolutely insane. Like, if you really think about that, and what makes it worse is, like, you would look at that box score and be like, if you didn't see how many points James Madison put up, and you saw Carolina score 50 points in a college game, you'd be like, yeah, man, whoever they played, they won. You know what I'm saying? And then you reveal the James Madison score, and it just tells a whole other story. So, and to add insult to injury, the quarterback from Carolina, that was the most passing yards ever in a game by a Carolina quarterback. I know if it wasn't the first, it was definitely in the top 3. Yeah. Third most. Third most passing yards in a single game, and we lose by 20. And it's not like you lost, 42 to 21. Them jokers put up 70 points on us. 70 points. I mean, I know I'm just kind of reiterating what you said, but and it's just going forward, it just sucks for Carolina's sake, because it's like, that's a team that you should beat. Of course, I always have the mindset of you never play down to your opponent. And it seemed like we didn't really take James Madison seriously, and they came and punched us in the mouth. And what makes things worse is it's just like, those are the type of games you need to win. Of course, Carolina's not a college football playoff team. They're not even in the top 25 right now. But you can at least play for a bowl game. You can at least play for, because it's going to get to the point where if we're that bad, like, we always talk about this in college football. It's all about NIL and getting transfers now. But if your program is not, putting out a good product on the field, what makes you think recruits are going to want to come there? So, yeah.
Very good points. One thing that I want to point out is their special teams.
Yeah.
That was another part. Their special teams, I mean, it was incredible to watch, because like you said, they hit us in the mouth. Mm-hmm. They did an onside kick. They blocked a punt. I mean, they beat us in every facet of the game.
Yeah.
And to have a guy who was preseason on the Heisman watch in Omarion Hampton, and you don't establish the run, some of that was JMU actually playing defense, but it was more so the offensive line simply not doing their job.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. When you're a Group 5 team, the players that you attract, the players that you actually recruit, typically aren't quite on the same level. Now, it's changed a lot in college football, but typically aren't quite on the same level. So to allow that team to be able to push us around, basically, push our offensive line around, and not allow Omarion Hampton to get going. Of course, once he did, he did what he always does.
Yep.
At yards after contact, I think last year he had over 1,000 yards after contact.
Yeah.
That's insane. And for James Madison to score, like you said, 50 points on the scoreboard should be a win.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, because we couldn't stop a cold.
I know.
So
it's bad.
I'll stop talking about that. I'm gonna get upset. But anyway.
No, you're good. And here's the last question I had for you, because they just every week they update the top 25 college football teams, and Texas is number 1 for the second consecutive week. And they had a 51-3 blowout win of UL Monroe, which, I mean, that was to be expected. But my question to you is, and then I'll give my thoughts after yours. But what team? I know Texas is ranked number 1 right now, but what team do you think is the best team in college football right now? If not Texas.
No, I actually think it is Texas,
Yeah.
and the reason I say that is Arch Manning.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, look, this is I'm not getting ready to say something crazy.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But from an athletic perspective,
Yeah.
he might be the most athletic Manning.
Yeah. Oh no, easily.
Time will tell because listen, okay, he's not Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but he certainly has better hips than Peyton and Eli.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Yeah.
That little juke that he did when he ran the 67-yard
Mm-hmm.
touchdown, I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is unusual coming from a Manning.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically you just don't see that. So I think because he has the ability to, teams are going to be paying attention to that. They're now going to, they're actually going to have to game plan for that a little bit more. So I think defensively, those are grown men on the defensive side of the ball for Texas. It's a lot like when you look at previous Alabama teams, and you can literally look at that defensive line and say there's at least 4 dudes that are going to be playing on Sunday.
Yeah.
Texas looks that way to me. They've got talent on the offensive side of the ball, and I think Arch Manning is the X factor. I really do.
I completely agree, and I was just going to say I think that Texas is the number 1 team in college football, and honestly, barring a miracle, I don't see it changing. I mean, what's also very impressive is, and I know they play UL Monroe, but like I saw the stat earlier today that they also have the number 1 defense right now, tied with Ole Miss. To start off the season, like they're literally averaging only giving up 5.5 points a game so far. And I know they've only played 3 games, but it's like even against UL Monroe, they had like 110 total yards for the game as a team. They had like 50-something passing yards and 50-something rushing yards, which is absolutely insane. And another thing I've thought about is, though, the way Arch Manning has looked, like they play Mississippi State next. That'll be their first SEC game. But they're already talking about Quinn Ewers might be back for that game. And I think it's just like,
oh my God.
As a coach, it's like, because Quinn Ewers is like, he's a monster, but it's like, I don't know how in the world as a coach, you can look at the way Arch Manning has been playing, taking command of the offense, just come in and just ball it out. Like, he's put up Heisman numbers his first 2 games. In the first game, he didn't even start. Like, he got subbed in when Ewers got hurt. So it's like, the only concern I have is, do you now move Arch Manning to the bench? Like, and I feel like they will, because you know how college football works. Because Arch Manning will play there, another full season. Next year, the team will be his. But it's just, as a coach right now, I feel like that has to be a discussion, though. It's like, I know Quinn Ewers is good, but they've looked unstoppable with Arch Manning and, taking the snacks and, commanding the offense. So we'll see what happens.
I'll say this. The reason I said that about Texas is because I think they're better with Arch Manning.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I do. Mm-hmm. I actually think they're better. I know how great listen, he's different. He has the DNA. You can tell that he's poised. You can tell that he's prepared all of his life. Reminds me a lot of how Drake May.
Yeah.
Whose dad was set records at Carolina and then played in the NFL. He was born to play the quarterback position.
Yeah.
And so that to me makes a difference. I will say one quick thing about my potential sleeper is, I hate to say this, Miami, and it's because of Cam.
Yeah, Cam Ward's a monster.
Yeah, that's my sleeper.
And that's what I like about college football this year. It's not just going to be 4 teams in the playoffs. It's like what's it called? Cam Ward, if they end up making the playoffs, which is like they've looked really good so far, that's a team you don't want to play because he can single-handed. I mean, they have a good run game. They have a really good, they have a really strong defensive unit. And then on top of that, their receiving core is up there like with the best. I'm not saying, because I honestly think overall the best receiving core in the nation is probably either Missouri or Alabama. But they play a very balanced style of offense. And then it's like, Cam Ward, he's different. And that's
he's the dude who can take over the game for you when you need a touchdown.
Exactly.
That's
Even
why they're one
comparing
of
him
my
to like Shador, like he has the athleticism factor, of course,
yes.
along with the arm talent and the arm strength. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Cam Ward in Miami. Like
Miami.
that's
Yeah.
that's a good point as well. But yeah, okay. Second on the docket now, just going shifting gears. We're just gonna go and start talking about the crazy NFL weekend. Especially, I mean, I keep saying NFL weekend, but just the Sunday slate of games. But yesterday, man, there were some crazy games. It's starting off with I'll get your thoughts on it, but the Minnesota Vikings versus the Texans. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I know we talked about this before the season. Like I knew the Vikings would be good. I just didn't think they would be this good. Like they're 3-0 already, and it's like they've beat really good teams. They beat the Texans. I forgot who they beat week 1, but it's like they've already beat the Texans and the 49ers. And it's like those are 2 playoff teams. Like I mean, the 49ers are the Super Bowl favorites out of the NFC for most people. So the fact that they've already won both of those games and to add insult to injury, like they don't even have T.J. Hawkinson right now or Jordan Addison, and they've been clicking all cylinders in. Even yesterday, I'm about to get to your thoughts as well, but Sam Darnold, he's looked like a stud. 4 touchdowns yesterday, 4 passing touchdowns. And I know we kind of discussed this briefly, like off air, but like he really might be the front runner for MVP right now. But your thoughts?
Yeah, crazy to say that. Mm-hmm. Crazy to say that Sam Darnold, who was, and I know we're going to talk about the Panthers too, but
we'll get
Sam
to
Darnold, who was part of on the Panthers, looked like, I won't say what he looked like.
Even on the Jets too. Before that,
and before with the Jets,
yeah.
The Vikings are doing like they have a team chemistry.
I agree.
It's not that okay. You've got a generational talent in Justin Jefferson for sure, but you still have to have, even though you've got a nice car, you have to have somebody driving the car. We hear that all the time.
Facts.
And that was my concern with the Vikings coming into this season. Like, could he actually drive the car? Could he get the ball to Justin Jefferson? Could they establish the running game? Their offensive line has actually been impressive.
It has. And Aaron Jones has been and sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
Even with Aaron Jones, it's just like I didn't know. I mean, of course, the last time we saw him before he was, became a Minnesota Viking, he looked like Eric Dickerson against the Cowboys in the playoffs. So it's like I knew Aaron Jones could still play. It's just I didn't know it would translate this fast. Like it's a whole new system. Especially a whole new offensive system from him coming from Green Bay with Matt LaFleur to what's it called, the Viking system now. But just seeing the way like he's gotten over 100 yards in back-to-back games, and what I also forgot about Aaron Jones is he's one of the best receiving backs in the entire league as well. Like I've been watching the games, he's got a lot of like all-purpose yards. Not only just running the ball, but receiving the ball at the backfield. So and then something that was also concerning to me was like how is their defense going to be, because they have a lot of like younger players now, and then they also lost Daniil Hunter. He ended up going to the Texans. So, but like their pass rush has been insane. Like their defense, and I'm gonna go back to the word you use, just like chemistry. You can tell like everybody's on the same page and everybody enjoys actually playing with each other. A lot. The same can't be said for a lot of teams that we've been seeing. So, but here's another question for you. Do you think that the Vikings can actually maintain this? And then on top of that, do you think like they actually have a chance to be like a real playoff, threat, or like even a Super Bowl contender? What do you think?
I actually do. Now, a major part of that is going to be injuries, because if you compare now, Darnold is definitely balling out. Yeah. The question that I have is, what happens in the playoffs? They have to establish the run. See, the 49ers right now, they've got a lot of guys hurt. Yeah. A lot of dudes injured. And so you haven't really seen, and now Purdy is accustomed to his, to that offense. And he's, for people to say he's a system quarterback or whatever, well, he does well in that system. The question, you know what I mean? Yeah. So the question for me is, can Sam Darnold maintain? I'm not even saying that he has to be throwing 4 touchdowns per game. Yeah. But can he throw 2 touchdowns? Can he not turn the ball over? Mm-hmm. And can they continue to establish the run? Get Justin Jefferson the ball as much as humanly possible. But certainly in the big moments, they're the kind of team that I look at and say, yeah, if he can maintain, not just being mediocre, but being a step above mediocre.
Yeah.
And being solid. Don't turn the ball over. So what I'm saying is, I'm asking him to be a level below Kirk Cousins when he was there.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying to him, don't turn the ball over like Kirk Cousins sometimes had a tendency to do.
Yeah. And see, that's that's been the question for the Vikings the last couple of years. Like, they'll have a great regular season. It's similar to the Cowboys. As soon as they get to the playoffs, it's like you just don't see that same team you saw in the regular season. But I will just say, like, one thing I do like about this whole Sam Darnold run is, and I always say this, they're not playing with any pressure. And it's like you can tell. It's like even Sunday, they were probably I don't sports bet or anything like that, but it's like I guarantee they were probably the underdogs in that game against the Texans, and same with their game against the 49ers. So it's like teams aren't really expecting a lot from them, heading into the season. So of course they've already exceeded expectations, and we've seen it in the past. Like, anything can happen when you make it to the playoffs. It's about who's clicking at the right time, and like you said, what team is actually healthy. And that's what's also like a bright spot for them. It's like they're doing all this right now without T.J. Hawkinson, who's a top 5 to 10 tight end, and Jordan Addison is probably a top 20 wide receiver in the entire league right now when he's healthy. And getting him back will make the offense even easier for Justin Jefferson. Like, Justin Jefferson will get more open touches, and it's Justin Jefferson, for crying out loud, but it's like that's just going to enhance and add to their offense that they already have shown so far. So
it's the chemistry
agree.
For me, though.
Yeah,
they're one of those teams. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I've got a sleeper team," and it's really not necessarily a sleeper team.
Yeah,
they have certainly been. They were a sleeper team coming into the season.
I agree.
There weren't real expectations. People thought, okay, they can win. Maybe 7 games, maybe 8 if they're doing well.
Yeah.
They're 3-0.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah.
And so you look at a team and you say, okay, you can tell those guys spent some time together in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell those guys are familiar with each other.
Yeah.
You can tell those guys actually like playing with each other and for each other. So that's so far to me, that's what stood out.
Yeah.
About the Vikings.
Yes, sir. And then also switching gears too, the next game I want to kind of talk, when we talk about it briefly, is the Giants and the Browns. Like, that was a game where I know we were talking about it. Deshaun Watson looked great. That literally his first play from scrimmage, he threw a bomb to Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper had a crazy game. He was at Alabama again. He had 2 touchdowns, but the one thing I have noticed about the Browns, and it's like that's honestly a bad loss first off to the Giants. But they haven't been able to maintain their dominance. Like, they start off the game well. Like, they had a good first half, but then their defense gave up some really big plays, and especially, like, we'll get into it too, Malik Neighbors. That brother's special. And there's 2 things that are inevitable in life: taxes, and that an LSU wide receiver is going to be good in the NFL. I quickly noticed that, like,
yes,
drafting the LSU wide receivers is a safe bet right now. But I want to get your thoughts, and also too, it's just, do you think Deshaun Watson is the answer for the Browns going forward, long term?
Yeah, I have to admit, when he came out in that first drive, I was like, oh, okay, this is the dude I've been waiting to see. And I will admit, they were a team that I kind of thought could surprise some people this year. Well, needless to say, I'm disappointed. I'm not a Browns fan by any stretch. Don't really care whether the Browns do well. I just thought that now that he had the offseason, last year was a little bit different, coming in, trying to figure things out after being injured and being out for so long. I thought things were going to turn around. I just have to say it's the Browns. They look like the Browns of old.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that. Now, granted, I will say this. And I also have him on my fantasy team. If what's the running back's name? I just
Nick
lost
Chubb.
It. Nick Chubb. Jeez.
Yeah.
will right a lot of the wrongs that are taking place right now. It's just, will he be back in time enough, or will they be able to tread water long enough until he comes back? I'm not saying he's the only missing ingredient, but if you have a decent running game and you can establish that, I think it would take a lot of pressure off of Deshaun Watson. And
Yeah,
right now, without a decent running game, he's having to do a little bit too much, in my opinion.
I agree.
And so I'm a little bit disappointed with their start. Could it turn around? I don't know, because I don't know that they, by the time he comes back,
Yeah,
to really be able to stay afloat.
I agree.
So,
Um,
yeah.
and then another
Now,
game.
neighbors,
Say it again.
real quickly before we move on to the next game, neighbors.
Yeah, he's special.
Um, yeah, that brother's special.
Yeah, he really is.
That yeah, that the listen the toe taps that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is it? Toe drag
Toe
swag.
drag swing,
That
just his body control too. Like those
yes,
are two insane catches.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll have to talk about the Cowboys, because
Oh yeah,
given what
trust
I
me,
saw,
I'm ready to talk about them.
yeah, given what I saw of neighbors, I don't necessarily know that the Cowboys are going to win on Thursday night,
Yep.
but
Yep.
we'll
We'll get
talk
to
about
that.
that a little bit. Yeah,
And
go ahead.
then another team I wanted to talk about too was, and I was very happy for the brother, but the Packers and Titans game yesterday, like that was a good game. Honestly, too, that was a game that I picked the Packers to win, but I was just really happy for Malik Willis, getting a win like that against his former team. And it's one of those things where it's like I get Will Levis, he's a good quarterback. He just hasn't been that good so far this season, and that was also one of those games where I'm like, are the Titans organization looking at themselves as like, man, like why did we trade Malik Willis? You know what I'm saying? But also too, and I know we kind of discussed this too briefly, but the Packers look really good right now, and Josh Jacobs has already, he's already gotten settled into the offense. Their offensive line is really good, and like I told you, preseason, Jordan Love was my MVP pick. Like he was genuinely my MVP pick. It's just I saw what they were able to do last year in the playoffs against the Cowboys. They pretty much brought back the same core, and of course they added Josh Jacobs. They lost Aaron Jones, but Josh Jacobs is already he looks very comfortable in the offense right now. And on top of that, it's like their receiving core is really good with Dobbs, and some of the plays that Christian Watson was making yesterday, I was just like, yeah, like this team could be very scary. And then they have a top 5 to 10 defense in the league. And like we've always said, come playoff time and deeper into the season, if you can establish the run and you have a solid defense, you can beat any team. Because then you're able to control time of possession, all that. But I know another thing is like, and trust me, the Packers are going to play Jordan Love whenever he returns from injury. I know they've been saying like maybe week 6, he might come back week 7, but I think what's a great sign for them to know is now, and also for Malik Willis's confidence sake, it's like going forward, he's proven that he can be a starting quarterback, in the National Football League. Whether that's with the Packers in the future, of course, I don't see that happening when Jordan Love is healthy, but he's honestly setting himself up to midway through the season, if like there's a team that needs to trade for a starting quarterback, or even this offseason, like I still think he'll be under his rookie deal, and I know the Packers just traded for him before the season started, but Malik Willis is really setting himself up to have like a Baker Mayfield type of story where given the right situation with the right talent around him, like he can be a very effective quarterback and a starting caliber quarterback in the National Football League going forward. So I was really happy for him, but I will say this: the Titans are kind of in trouble because they've already lost some games that they should have won, in my opinion, and I don't see things getting better. It's like they haven't been able to establish a run, and I know they brought in Tony Pollard, new running backs, but also their passing game has been pretty pedestrian. I'm just being honest with you, like they haven't been able to move the ball down the field, and they're honestly asking a lot of Will Levis. It's like he's looked semi comfortable in the pocket, but overall, he just like looks very frantic. Their offensive line has not been good, and then it's like he almost has to like pretty much play like the Superman role and like the superhero role more times than not, which is like you're not gonna win consistently like that, in my opinion. But your thoughts?
Yeah, so let me start with the Packers.
Yeah,
It's a good problem to have. to have Malik Willis as your backup quarterback now. So, if Jordan Love stays out, I know you said maybe by week 6.
Mm-hmm.
If he were to stay out an extended period of time, it's a great thing to be able to say, "Oh, Willis is in there, and we're good to go."
Yeah.
Hope it doesn't turn into a situation where I would think that, of course, Jordan Love starts when he comes back.
Yeah.
But do you want to mess up the chemistry if you won 6 or 7 games straight? Malik Willis has gotten into a flow. Again, good problem to have.
Definitely.
First world problem.
Yeah.
When I look at the Titans, Will Levis plays some of the most boneheaded quarterback at the quarterback position. He plays some of the most boneheaded quarterback position that I've seen recently. Like, dude, stop throwing the ball sideways and between your legs and behind your back. Some of the stuff is just downright foolish. It looks like some days he's out there playing flag football.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that, a quarterback's best friend is a really, really good running back and a really, really good tight end. But if you're throwing silly passes like that, and especially when you're in a position to score, that's where you can't do it. I saw his coach literally cuss him out.
Yeah.
Like, what are you? Yeah, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between, like, what I was talking about before, Malik Willis, and even Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold's been in the league for a long time, and he knows how, not to turn the ball over. But that's the difference between, a team that has a good running game. You establish that run. Now that you've got a generational talent, of course, in Justin Jefferson. But what Will Levis has to recognize is, I don't need to lose the game for us.
Facts.
Nobody's saying that you are the person who's just going to go out and win the game. You're not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
You're not doing that. That's not the kind of talent you have. But what we are asking you to do is to not go out there and lose the game.
Exactly.
And by doing the silly boneheaded stuff. So Tony Pollard, I don't know that he's the answer at running back. I mean, I know he's a good change of pace kind of back, but he's no Derrick Henry.
No.
And that goes without saying. So the fact that you've downgraded your running back position, in my opinion, and you've got a quarterback who at times doesn't always look as comfortable as he should, and he just does some silly stuff. So I agree with you. I think the Titans are in trouble.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then another game I wanted to talk about, because this is one of my favorite players in the entire league. You know this, but I'm really happy for Justin Fields and what I've been seeing from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, that's another team that started off 3-0. And what's crazy about the whole situation was, I remember literally like a month ago before the season even started, like the way Russell Wilson looked in the preseason. They were really people were nervous about what was going to happen, with the Steelers, like with the whole quarterback situation. And of course, I never wish injury on anybody, but Russell Wilson being injured has been a blessing in disguise for the franchise and for Justin Fields, because this first 3 games, he's looked extremely comfortable. He's honestly looking like he's playing at the level that we all knew that he could play at. It's just the Bears didn't really value that while he was there. Like, we all know Justin Fields can play. And while I'm also happy for the brother is like you were just talking about with Will Levis, it's the opposite for him. Like when he was with the Bears, I feel like Justin Fields, he had a lot of pressure on him because they drafted him high. He was supposed to be the franchise guy. They didn't really give him time to develop. They just threw him right into the fire. And you can tell the Steelers just their defense is so good. And speaking of their defense, TJ Watt, that brother's special as well. He's right now. I know there's Micah Parsons, there's Myles Garrett, but he the best defensive player in the league by far. It's not even close.
Is he better than JJ?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
Do you? Okay.
I'm not saying because JJ Watt's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I'm just saying I think long term he will end up having a better career than JJ Watt, and that's saying a lot because JJ Watt's one of the best defensive ends of all time. But just seeing the way TJ Watt, when he wants to get in the backfield, it's his choice.
It's Kurt.
Yeah, it really is, and it's the Steelers' defense has always been that good, and that's why I'm happy for Justin Fields. It's he's made really timely plays, but he doesn't have to go out there and throw for 300 yards for them to win the football game. prime example of that was yesterday. Like, he ran the ball when he had to. He had a rushing touchdown, and then he also made the right play, just like you were just talking about with Will Levis. Just like, bro, you don't have to play hero ball. Like, and I get it. The Titans don't have a defense like the Steelers have, but like they're also playing to Justin Fields' strengths. Like with Russell Wilson, you can't run RPOs and option plays like that. Like, you know, when he was with Seattle, you could have, but it's like he's past doing that. But seeing Justin Fields, like, you know, being able to have option plays and actually not having to do everything for them to actually win the football game and be effective, it's like it's very refreshing to see. And I'll be honest, they're 3-0. The way that defense is playing and the way Justin Fields' confidence continues to rise from game to game, I think the Steelers are, honestly, they might mess around and win that division. And then on top of that, I just feel like that's another team you don't want to see in the playoffs, because when your defense is that good, you can somewhat establish the run, and you have a confident quarterback play. That's a dangerous combination. Like you know me, I'm a Lamar Jackson fan. I'm rooting for the Ravens to win this year, but God forbid, I would not want to see the Ravens have to play the Steelers in the playoffs the way they're looking right now. And like you said, well, actually, because I think you're probably about to say what I was about to say, alluding to Mike Tomlin. I trust him way more than I do John Harbaugh and some of these other coaches come playoff time. So that also plays into it as well.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. Listen, what a difference a head coach makes.
Yep.
What a difference an organization makes.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin, listen, the fact that he was on the hot seat a couple of years ago, or been for the past 2 or 3 years, is ludicrous. Yeah. It is ridiculous that was even a topic of conversation, because Justin Fields feels secure playing the quarterback position. They've put him in a position to be successful.
Yeah.
You know, you've put it's not just about the talent that's around. It's you've coached him.
Yeah.
And you are making sure that what you do caters to what it is that he does well. The offense is set up such that he can actually be effective and do what it is that he does. My only concern, and well, I won't even say it's my concern, because I think with another organization, there may have been a situation where, you know, when Russell Wilson is ready and able to play, that they might just, you know, put him back in. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think Mike Tomlin has been around the league long enough. He recognizes when a team is on a roll. It's like in basketball. When you've got somebody who's got the hot hand, you keep feeding the ball. And I think that this is a situation where Tomlin has recognized Justin Fields. You know, some coaches look at a player and say, I can rehabilitate that guy. I can make that guy better. And I don't even think that was necessarily Mike Tomlin's mentality. I think I've seen what this guy can do, and let me just make sure that we put him in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
That's what's happening now. And to your point, that's not a team come playoff time. Yeah. I know we're going to talk about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Yeah, but come playoff time, I agree with you, because what I saw yesterday, I trust Mike Tomlin a whole lot more than I do John Harbaugh.
Same here. And then you actually answered my other question about the Steelers. I was going to say, and trust me, you already know my answer, but I was going to say, you already answered it. But I was like, whenever Russell Wilson is healthy, I'm just going to answer the question now. They better not put him back in there.
No,
he's
now your backup quarterback.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what's also the pluses for the Steelers too, and this just shows you, like, you know, it better work out for the Bears with Caleb Williams. And I mean, so far he's looked like he'll be solid, but what's crazy is he hasn't really played, and I know this is his third game, but like seeing the way the Bears have played, I'm like, man, if Justin Fields had Romeo Odunze, and DJ Moore and Keenan Allen whenever he's back, and DeAndre Swift at running back, he'd be able to do some special things as well, especially with the right offensive coordinator. But we won't even get into that. But what's also looking good for the Steelers is too, what many people might forget. The Steelers got Justin Fields for a 6th round pick. 6th round.
Yeah, that's
they got that brother for it was either a 5th or 6th round pick. So it's just like, if he ends up being your answer at quarterback, you basically gave up what would have been drafted, like maybe a practice squad running back. Respectfully.
Like I said, difference between organizations.
Yeah.
Steelers Tomlin knows what he's doing. You've got a GM, the football people.
And you can also tell too. I was just watching the game yesterday, and like, trust me, that they beat the Chargers. That's a good win. The Chargers were 2-0 heading into that game. And granted, yes. I mean, they played the Panthers the previous week, so it's not like they really played anybody crazy. But it's like, you know, Jim Harbaugh's been doing a great job so far with the Chargers, and that's also a dangerous team too because they've been able to establish a run. Like with J.K. Dobbins, he's, you know, I know there are questions about him coming off an injury, but he's looked phenomenal so far. But yesterday, like I said, the difference was Justin Fields, that comfort level with the offense. Coaching, of course, too, played a big role. But that defense in T.J. Watt, it's scary to watch. Like, they're literally in the backfield every other play like it's nothing. They have great safety play with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Then another name I didn't even mention, too, with Justin Fields was he hasn't even fully developed chemistry with George Pickens yet. So whenever that happens, too, and, you know, because Justin Fields has it, you know, he has a you know, not only the arm talent but the arm strength. He can get the ball downfield with the best of them. So once he continues to establish that relationship with someone like George Pickens, their offense is going to be even scarier, in my opinion. So, but getting to another team I know we want to talk about, the Carolina Panthers. Congrats to them. They got their first win yesterday. Congrats to Dave Canales. But I want to go and bring it up because I already knew this was going to happen. Trust me, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, the whole Bryce Young situation and you know, how we feel like he's been mistreated. But I want to go and shut this down because all I've been seeing on Twitter is, oh, this shows Bryce was the problem. And you see, like, the first game that, you know, he's not starting. Andy Dalton throws for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, the whole 9. I'm just going to go and shut it down right now and say, Bryce has never been the problem. He will not be the problem. This shows me two things. First off, common sense will tell you it's like Andy Dalton's a 13-year veteran in the NFL. Of course, he's going to be able to read a defense a little bit better than Bryce Young can right now, given the fact that he's a second-year quarterback. And like we've alluded to, he's not been set up to succeed. So that's my first point. But then my second point is, and I've talked about this, it's no different than what the Falcons are doing right now. I get Bryce Young was the first pick, but they did terrible evaluation at the fact that you shouldn't have immediately thrown him out there. What this shows me is, as soon as Bryce Young was drafted, you let him play a game or two, and they did this last year. Bryce Young played the first couple games. He didn't look terrible, but he didn't look really, you know, great as well. I remember that third game, they say he had an ankle injury. He sat out. Andy Dalton played. I remember they played the Saints. I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure it was the Saints. And I don't think they won that game, but Andy Dalton actually played really good. What they should have done last year is, at that point, let Bryce Young just, I'm not even going to call it benching him. I'm just going to call it like you're allowing him to develop and learn from a seasoned veteran quarterback. They would have been better off doing that all last year because they weren't playing for a lot, just being completely honest with you. And then heading into this season, you know, especially with the offseason, you know, you might have better results. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'll go as even far as to say is if they would have done that last year, Dave Canales, and I mean, Grant, I think he's going to be a good coach, you know, long term. He might not even be the coach right now for the Carolina Panthers. Frank Reich still might have been the coach, just given that. But going forward, what I don't like is, and I know we were talking about this as well, the report that came out from Adam Schefter saying that, you know, teams are trying to, you know, had very strong interest in Bryce Young and that the Panthers don't want to trade him. I'm like, bro, that's ludicrous. Like, you're doing a disservice to Bryce Young. It's like you've already benched him. You've already put him in a terrible situation from the start. And going forward, it's just like, even now, there's been reports that the Panthers, their plan is to start him again this season. Why would you do that? You've already killed the brother's confidence. And then it's like now on top of that, you're just going to tick off the fans even more. If Andy Dalton continues to ball like he is, and they actually continue to win games, which sad, I don't think is going to happen, just being realistic with you. But if they continue to win games and then you then reinsert Bryce, that's not fair to him. And that's also too, it's just like you're just going to tick off the fan base even more, in my opinion. But your thoughts?
So, couple of things. I think that Bryce has never been set up to be successful.
Yeah.
With this team, I think that when you look at what they gave up to him to get him.
Yeah.
First of all, he can't help where he was drafted. I know, some folks might say, well, he was the number one pick, but he can't help where he was drafted. If you look at the guys who were drafted really, really high, who've been successful, though, even though they were drafted high, those guys still had an opportunity to sit and learn.
Yep.
Typically, when they're drafted that high, Caleb Williams is an example this year. They're drafted that high, they're going to be thrown out there to the wolves.
Yep.
Coming into this season, he only played part of a preseason game.
Yeah, he didn't even play in the preseason.
He didn't play in the preseason. You don't prepare him for that. You ship out DJ Moore, you ship out McCaffrey, and
the ninth pick.
And the ninth pick. And then to your point about Andy Dalton, yeah, if I've been in the league for 13 years, I ought to be able to come in and do something.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, like you've played for the Cowboys, you played for
the Bengals. His best years with the Bengals.
His best years with what, Red Rocket?
Yeah, when they had AJ Green. And that's why I said, like, he had a great game yesterday, but I'm not about to then just switch gears and be like, now, oh, this shows Bryce was a problem. Bryce has never been the problem. So
no, Bryce isn't the problem. He won't. To your point, he won't be the problem. The other thing that is we talked earlier about organizations.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, because they're here in North Carolina. And I'm not going to say but so many things about them. But
I'm the same way.
But here's the reality. It matters who you have in the front office.
Yep.
It matters who you have making decisions when it comes to drafting and building around, who you draft. It matters that you bring in a young player. You don't surround him with good talent. I mean, at the end of the day, he is a slightly undersized quarterback. Nobody's saying that he can't be successful. You got the Drew Brees of that. But if you're going to bring in a guy, then make sure that you give him the best opportunity to succeed.
I completely agree.
Wide receivers out there. Let's not even. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Like, and I'm not dissing the brother. He's obviously got really, really good talent. But Chuba Hubbard is his running back.
And he went off yesterday, but
he went off yesterday because they established the run, and then by establishing, you then can do play action pass. The games that Bryce was in, I didn't see Chuba Hubbard going off.
They didn't establish run at all in those games, and
that's my point. And so, is it because you're playing against the Raiders? I mean, the Raiders actually had a very good defense at the end of last year. And the expectation was. Coming into this year, they were going to have a good defense. Andy Dalton did what a backup quarterback who has been in the league for 13 years should do.
Yeah.
He went out there, he threw some good passes, they caught him, but he also had, a good running game established.
And he had a clean pocket.
He had a clean pocket. The other part of that is, it just kind of baffles my mind sometimes. It seems as though a coach can game plan for certain types of quarterbacks.
Yep.
To play, but they can't game plan for a young quarterback like a Justin Fields or Bryce Young, because it's almost like the whole game plan changed because you got Andy Dalton back there. And I'm like, so why didn't you make those adjustments for Bryce Young? Why didn't you make adjustments for what it is that Bryce Young does very well versus pushing him out there and saying you need to get better in this system versus us creating a system that allows you to do what it is that well.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. That to me, you're not allowing the young man to develop, and you're killing his confidence.
Yeah.
And that to me is what I've seen. In the first, these first couple of games for him, lack of confidence, and one other thing, I'm just gonna say it. It's PTSD because the dude is scared to death that as soon as he drops back,
exactly,
because that's what he's been experiencing for the last, last
he was the
year
most
leading into
quarterback last year in the entire league.
Exactly. So you're dealing with PTSD. So now it becomes a mental thing.
Yep.
Because he's thinking, okay, I'm gonna hike this ball, but as soon as I hike it, I got to get rid of it because if I don't, I'm gonna get I'm going to get killed.
Exactly.
That to me, again, is not setting him up for success. So that's all I'll say about the Panthers because, I could go on.
Yeah.
I really could. I'll stop there.
And another thing that I've seen is like I've seen people talk about it too. Two other quick points about back to what you were talking about, just like giving quarterbacks time to develop. Like some of the best quarterbacks we've seen didn't start off starters. Like think about this: Aaron Rodgers was drafted very high, but you know who his successor was? Brett Favre, Mr. Wrangler himself. So
yes.
Sometimes you have to give it time, and it's like, of course, Brett Favre is an extreme example. It's not like Andy Dalton's Brett Favre, but Andy Dalton's a good NFL quarterback that's had a long career. It's like that is the type of guy that you would like for a young quarterback to be able to learn from and develop under. Patrick Mahomes, he started off under Alex Smith. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's been
Jordan Love.
Yep, Jordan Love, prime example. Like he started under Aaron Rodgers.
Now, again, to your point, these are guys who weren't necessarily drafted. Really, I mean, they were drafted
in the first round. Yeah,
they weren't the first draft pick, and they weren't in the top. The first 5 picks.
Yeah,
but with that, if you really want that guy, and I know it's a different business model now. When a team drafts you as the first pick, then the expectation is you're going to immediately start and you're going to be really, really good. CJ Stroud is one of the few examples that we.
And I was just about to say him because the difference is like, for example, I get the problem was the Panthers traded everything that they had almost. They basically traded the whole franchise, basically everything except Sir Purr to get Bryce Young. So they didn't. But comparing him to C.J. Stroud, it's like I've heard people say, "Well, what if C.J. Stroud was with the Panthers? It'd really be no different." I mean, he might have won
one more game.
Yeah, he might have won a couple more games, but C.J. Stroud has had almost a perfect situation. Like D'Amico Ryans he should have like Coach of the Year candidate. I feel like he's going to be a Coach of the Year candidate. He reminds me a lot of Mike Tomlin, just the impact that he's able to have on the franchise, like the Dan Campbells of the world. But you bring in D'Amico Ryans, they set up the offense for him, and then even last year, like they had Nico Collins, they had Tank Dell, they had a solid run game. Like their defense was solid, and then what do they do this offseason? They go out there and get Stephon Diggs, like still one of the best wide receivers in the entire league. You add that now with Nico Collins. You add that, to Tank Dell, still being on the roster, still being young. And then, you know what they do? They even take matters, they take it a step further, and they go out there and add a top 10 running back in Joe Mixon. So, and they have a top 10 tight end in Dalton Schultz. So it's just like, that's why I feel like Bryce has not been given a fair shake. He hasn't been given, like, you can't even compare the weapons. Like, the names I just listed, and it's no disrespect, it's just like the Panthers don't have that because part of it is they traded a lot of that away. But the other thing I will want to say about Bryce is back to this whole, like, oh, we're just going to keep him. You're doing him a disservice. Like, he's already young, and what they got to realize is this is a quarterback league. So, going forward, if you already know that, because Dave Canales said it himself, we're going to play the quarterback that gives us the best chance to win from week to week. And after seeing how Andy Dalton played last week, and I'm just going to be honest with you, probably even the players in the locker room are probably thinking like, that's not going to be fair to them to just go right back to Bryce, if they just got to win with Andy Dalton. If you already know that long term you're not going to play him, you need to go and trade him because, like, this will be his second year. After the 4 years for the 4-year contract that he's currently in, he's gonna want to try to get paid. And right now, the way his career is panned out so far, and like I said from the start, it's not his fault at all. But by the time he gets done with his rookie contract, he might be a backup somewhere. He might not even be a starter. So it's just like I would love to see him have a fair opportunity with a team like I heard the Dolphins. I would love the Dolphins or. Even the team we just talked about, the Raiders could use a quarterback. I get Gardner Minshew he's a solid like journeyman type of quarterback, and he's not gonna lose you games. But Bryce Young with Antonio Pierce, Devontae Adams, a solid defense that could feed a few families. So
absolutely.
But I won't keep harping on the Panthers because we could have an hour episode of just about them alone.
Yeah.
There's 2 more games I want to get to, and I'll save the best for last. But Sunday Night Football last night, honestly, going into that game, I picked the Falcons to win, And I'm gonna be honest, I'm very disappointed that they didn't win that game because they had multiple opportunities on those last two drives at the end to win that game. There was a very controversial non-PI, like there was a pass interference call where the DB basically, it was clearly a pass interference call on Kyle Pitts, and they didn't call that, which honestly the Falcons would have probably scored right there because it was literally in the end zone. They would have been at the 1 yard line. So I would assume that they would score at the 1 yard line. But those last two drives, like going back to like their very last drive of the game, they had a chance. It's 3rd and 1. You don't even have Bijan Robinson, and you try to do a zone run to the outside. It doesn't work. Guess what they come out and do on 4th and 1? The same exact play, and then they just sub in Bijan Robinson. So on 4th and 1, we already know the run is coming. Don't do the exact same play that you just did previously. Literally the exact same run to the exact same side of the field as the left side of the field. Like, it didn't work. So that was ball game right there. But what I will say is, I know the Chiefs are 3-0 right now, but in my opinion, they should be 1-2. They shouldn't have won that game against the Bengals. And then last night, the Falcons, that was their game to win. Drake London had a wonderful performance. Kirk Cousins outperformed Patrick Mahomes in the first half. He had a better QBR rating at halftime. I don't know, how the game ended up, but I will say for the Chiefs, I'm concerned for them going forward because even though they're 3-0, they've had 2 games where, in my opinion, they really should have lost. They don't have Pacheco. I know the undrafted rookie, I can't have talk. The kid that actually has like the pet alligator they were talking about. He came in, was solid in the backfield. But what's concerning for me about the Chiefs right now is they have not been able to establish, the chemistry and the magic that they've had in previous years with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I've heard more about Taylor Swift at the Chiefs games than I have Travis Kelce this year, and that's a problem.
Well, here's what I'll say about the Chiefs. And I'm gonna sound like a hater, and I don't care. They benefit from the most non-calls of any team I've ever seen. They are, in my opinion, the new
modern day Patriots.
The new New England Patriots.
Yeah.
There have been, and I saw a stat the other day of how many interceptions that should have been real interceptions that were called back for Patrick Mahomes. That non-pass interference call. I mean, there's one of those literally every game. And then there's literally every game, and then there's a holding call. At least 4 or 5 of those that are missed every single game for the Chiefs. So whether you want to say that there is a script in the NFL or not, I will say that there is certainly a leaning towards the Chiefs winning games when they probably.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
When I look at, Mahomes, I mean, he's actually played, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had him on my fantasy team last year. He was putting up just decent numbers.
Yeah.
But I started paying attention to, some of these non-calls, and I'm like, my God.
Yeah.
When you start adding those up, those are pivotal calls and pivotal moments. And they actually matter, and they make a difference in whether or not, the opposition wins. And so for me, I've been paying attention to that. That's been very noticeable to me. And I'm really seeing them look a lot like them, treating them a lot like the Patriots.
Yeah, I completely
agree. I remember how the Patriots, like, I watched some of their games and I'm thinking, how in the world have there not been any holding calls in this game against the Patriots? That's not humanly possible. They can call hold on every play, but they only seem to call hold when it benefits the Chiefs. Yes, I said it. I said we're gonna say the things that most people want to say, but don't have anybody to say it for them.
Yep.
I think the Chiefs benefit from officiating. I do.
Agree, because even too, like the missed PI call that happened last night. Guess who they called that same call on the Bengals that game against the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs ended up winning as a result of it. So it's the stuff like that too. And it happens in the playoffs. I remember last year, even their game against the Ravens. Of course, the Ravens, I'm still ticked off about it to this day because if they just ran the football, they would have won that game. But you remember even too near the end of the game, there was a missed PI whenever they threw it to the end zone to Isaiah Likely. didn't end up making the catch. I don't know if you remember that, but there's so many plays like that after a while it's just like, you can't fool me. I'm familiar with your game. So there's a lot of calls that have like, and granted, like I said, the Falcons still could have won that game. They had terrible play calling at the end of that game. But I will say the Falcons, like, I feel like they can actually be a really like formidable team going forward, because what they showed me last night is they can compete with the best. I mean, that's the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. And I will say the one bright spot for the Chiefs is, as bad as Travis Kelce has looked so far, Rashee Rice, that brother is special. I know he had all that, off the field stuff over the off season, but I'm happy to see him playing real good football. And he's already becoming like the Chiefs' number one option. I mean, I know it's supposed to be Travis Kelce, but for their benefit, like last night, that brother was unguardable. They were using him, in RPOs. They were using him for screens. Like, he's a pretty good wide receiver. Like, he's a pretty good blocking wide receiver as well. And then like he's very fast. So, like I'm not really concerned about the Chiefs going forward because of like the stuff that you said. It's just they should really be 1-2 right now, in my opinion. And it's like they're not gonna have Pacheco for the next 5 to 6 weeks either. So that'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with them. It's just like the Chiefs are gonna be the Chiefs though. They're gonna get calls. They have Patrick Mahomes. So trust me, they're still gonna be a playoff team and compete for a Super Bowl. I just don't see them winning the Super Bowl this year. I don't see them three-peating.
Agreed.
But it'll be interesting to see. And then the game I really wanted to get to and discuss is the Ravens and the Cowboys. First off, I'm gonna say this. This is why, like I was just alluding to, I'm so ticked off about the Ravens not winning against the Chiefs last year in the playoffs, because they showed what they need to do every single game. Dad, they threw 15 passes the entire game. They ran the ball 45 times, and look what happens.
Listen, let me take this one because
I'll chime in after you're done.
Yeah, let me take this one because what that showed is I don't know what John Harbaugh was doing in the
yeah, I don't know what he's doing.
I like last night after the game.
Yeah,
Lamar
was heated.
He was upset
yeah.
because you are the best running team in the league. You have Derrick Henry, and instead of you, like, this dude really is a transcendent type of quarterback.
Yes.
Michael has that kind of skill set, has that kind of ability. No, there is no game plan where he should have to throw the football 40 times.
No.
Yesterday showed it. And then when you have the lead and the defense was letting you down, you then put him back in the game, and instead of running the football, you start asking him to throw the football.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
On plays where he really shouldn't have had to throw the football.
No.
If the Ravens make it back and they don't win, it's time to move on from John Harbaugh.
It's time.
I'm saying that now. I'm saying that now at the beginning of this season, because this is your third game. You had 2 games that you probably should have won.
Yeah.
Again,
they should have won last week against the Raiders. They stopped running the ball. They were up 10 in the fourth quarter.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you establish the run, which you should be able to do because you have the best in the league, you have the best running quarterback in the league. You've got a ridiculous running back in Derrick Henry, who is a freight train.
Yeah.
And once you get that train moving, it is impossible to stop.
I'm telling you.
The question is, are you a smart enough conductor to actually say, we're going to actually get on this train and ride it?
Yep. Pause.
So my question to John Harbaugh, what in the name of God are you doing?
Yeah. Because even last night watching that game, like, and Lamar is my favorite player in the league, so I'm somewhat biased, but like they were up 28-6 at the start of the fourth quarter. Like, that game shouldn't have even been close. You run the ball. And here's another thing I've noticed too. Derrick Henry, he's good on these zone runs, but when you put him in the I formation, just put him in I form and have a fullback out there, and the Ravens have a plethora of fullbacks, the brother is unstoppable. Like last night, they would put in Patrick Ricard, they would throw him in at fullback. I mean, he's one of the best fullbacks in the league. But you can put Isaiah Likely back there if you want to. I don't care. Just have somebody blocking for him in that I form. Just let that brother pick a hole, pause, and it's off to the races. Like, the brother had they had over 270 rushing yards between him and Lamar Jackson. And it's like, that is, like, the fact that game was even close. You were up 28-6 at the start. Well, I'm not saying halftime. At the start of the fourth quarter, that is unacceptable. And I even saw, Marlon Humphrey got on Instagram Live. And I love to see this from Lamar. The brother was heated because that game should not have been close. Like, Derrick Henry, he's a generational talent. Like, he might not be. I still think he's a top 3 running back in the league. I know people are going to say, well, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara's look really good, Christian McCaffrey, but Derrick Henry is unstoppable. And the Ravens' recipe for success going forward, of course, there are games where Lamar might need to throw for 300 yards, like when you're playing with some of these top defenses like the Steelers and stuff, and you can't establish a run. And the plus is Lamar can do that. He's shown that he can throw for 250 yards. He can play superhero football if he needs to. But, like, against most teams in the National Football League, if you come out and establish a run, like, the Ravens are virtually unbeatable because their defense is also insane too. They have a top 10 defense. I know they lost Patrick Queen, but they still have Kyle Hamilton. They still have great edge rushers. They still have Marlon Humphrey. Like, they still have like a top 10 defense in the entire National Football League. So if they can continue to just run the ball, and I keep saying it, man, and they didn't even have Derrick Henry last year and they still could have beat the Chiefs. So it's like now the fact that they have Derrick Henry and he's healthy, like, of course, he's not going to be able to run for 170 yards every game. That's going to also transition me to the Cowboys. The Cowboys' run defense is god-awful. That literally yesterday, the Ravens did whatever they pleased. Like, I'm telling you, 270 rushing yards, and you know that the Ravens are going to run the ball is unacceptable. And I will say this about the Cowboys. I know this is a hot take, and I said it's coming to the season. I don't think the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs because I think teams know right now all you need to do against the Cowboys is run the ball. Because, like, literally yesterday, the Ravens controlled the time of possession. And then on top of that, Dak had to play hero ball. And Dak made some like, Dak's fourth quarter was immaculate. Like, he made some really big throws. But they not only can they stop the run, they don't have a run game. Ezekiel Elliott, I like the brother, but their offensive line play has been pretty pedestrian in the run game. Between him and Dottle, like, they have not been able to establish a run in any game except for against the Browns, and the Browns were missing about half their roster that game. But I just don't see the Cowboys having enough going forward, especially on the defensive front, to win games because the average football team, even if they don't have a Derrick Henry, they're just going to continue to run the football. You know what I'm saying? So, you still there?
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. I thought it cut out. But, yeah, and another thing, too, about the Cowboys is, and I put this blame on Jerry Jones, because what I could also tell is yesterday, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott are not on the same page, and people were talking about that because I don't know if you saw the play, but CeeDee Lamb ended up fumbling the ball, and then after that, he was really just pouting the rest of the game. Like, so that's why the fact that the Cowboys were even able to make that a game, and he had a terrible game is still saying a lot, but it also alludes to why John Harbaugh should be on the hot seat going forward. If the Ravens can't close out games, if it continues to be like that, because they got lucky yesterday. The Cowboys, like, offense is not that good, and really the reason why they ended up being able to close out that game was because, like I said, the Cowboys' run defense is pedestrian. But going forward for the Cowboys, and what sucks for them is they've already paid Dak. They've paid CeeDee Lamb. They're going to have to pay Micah Parsons. They don't have much money left to work with. And then that's also going to lead me into my next point. Seeing Jerry Jones yesterday, seeing what Derrick Henry did against them, what's sad is the Cowboys had a chance to go out there and sign Derrick Henry. And imagine if they had him right now. Even with their run defense being terrible, they wouldn't have to be on defense so much. They can't establish a run. Imagine if Dak Prescott had Derrick Henry right now. But Jerry Jones was too cheap to go out there and get him. Because even yesterday after the game, they asked Jerry Jones, they were like, how do you feel about Derrick Henry? He was like, we didn't have enough money to sign him. But he only signed for like $12 million with the Ravens. So you just paid Dak Prescott. You made him the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. So that's a lame excuse. But I'm just telling you,
Oh,
things are going to continue to get worse before they get better for the Dallas Cowboys because what I saw yesterday, that run defense, it is terrible. Like it's bad. Your thoughts, though, my bad.
I can tell you're a little bit passionate about it.
Yeah, because it's bad. And I'm not even
No,
a Cowboys fan. It's just like seeing that product on the field yesterday. It's like I feel bad for Cowboys fans. It's like you're supposed to be America's team. That defense was terrible.
it absolutely was. But you know what? Good enough for him.
Yeah,
I'm not a
facts.
Jerry Jones. I'm not a Jerry Jones fan. I think that he is a prime example of another one that sits in Charlotte who tries to control too much with the team, runs his mouth too much, doesn't make the right decision. People can say, well, he drafts well and they've done this and they've done that. I think he's cursed the team because he wants to be involved in every facet of it.
Yeah,
Bob Kraft is the prime example of, hey, I'm an owner of a team, but I'm going to allow the people who know football to actually do football. And so, yeah, whatever happens with the Cowboys, good enough for them.
facts.
That's literally my take for them. So, speaking of freight trains, um, let's make a quick shift. Yeah, that's a terrible segue, by the way. Um, make a quick shift to the WNBA. I
Yep.
wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about Asia Wilson,
Yeah.
but she's achieved the fact that it's not being talked about enough. Um, I mean, we could go on and on about the specifics. I mean, how during the course of the season she's doing generational stuff,
Yeah.
um, but wasn't necessarily the topic of conversation.
No.
So I'm glad that she was a unanimous MVP.
Yep.
I
Second
think
in
that
WNBA history.
second WNBA history was the other. What was Cheryl Swoops?
Yep.
Was it Cheryl
It was
Swoops?
either Cheryl
No,
Swoop.
Cynthia
It
Cooper.
was yep,
Cynthia
Cynthia
Cooper.
Cooper. Yep.
Cynthia Cooper. Yes. So generational talent may go down as the best WNBA player
I completely
um,
agree.
of all time. Now she still has. She's already surpassed a number of the WNBA players,
Yeah.
and uh, so we already know about the points. We already know that, to be perfectly honest with you, this probably could have been her fourth MVP.
Yeah. She got robbed
Back,
last year, in my opinion.
she got robbed last year. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about. I mean, we could spend some time on players, but I'd really like to focus on the playoffs that are coming up,
Yeah. Just
and
started. Yeah.
yeah, and what your thoughts are, like some predictions.
For
And we're
sure.
going to be wrapping things up in just a few minutes, but I wanted to take a few minutes to really understand your thoughts on the playoffs. I'll start with the Fever and the Connecticut Sun
Yeah.
yesterday. Um, Caitlin Clark looked terrible. let's just
Call
start
a
there.
spade a spade. Yeah.
I'm calling a spade a spade. I want to hear the folks who say, she should have been in MVP conversation. Look at her performance yesterday in the playoffs. So I know that there's always going to be an excuse for when she doesn't play well. People are going to say, well, she's the face of the league. If she's the face of the league now, then in your first playoff game, you shouldn't be shooting 0 for 10 from three.
Yeah.
When she's not scoring from behind the 3-point line, she's not very effective. I know she had ended up with 8. Those were what I call those
Garbage
kinds of
stats.
assists. Well, it's what I call the Russell Westbrook effect, where you're stat padding. You're
Yeah.
getting the stats, but it doesn't necessarily
It didn't
amount
translate.
to a win.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cause
And so, no, very quickly. So when I look at how she played yesterday, I know some people, the excuse might be, well, it's her first playoff. You can't have it both ways. If she's a generational talent, then not. You got to step up. She didn't step up. Asia Wilson last night, who is your MVP, stepped up
yep.
and played and made plays when they needed to be made. So your predictions on some of the playoff games,
Oh, yeah.
WNBA playoff games.
Well, I'll just go series by series because there's 4 series. But like you said, the Sun against the Fever. I'll be honest. I think the Sun are end up. I think they're going to sweep them because I mean different than the NBA's. Whoever wins 3 out of 5 games.
Yep.
But I think the Sun are actually going to sweep the Fever. And part of the reason why I say that is just like they had Caitlin Clark in solitary confinement yesterday. They had her in Alcatraz.
Straight jacket.
Yeah, like straight jacket. I'm telling you, like because what they did was start off the game watching. They had DeWanna Bonner start off on her, and she had a phenomenal game. Like she's a bucket. I didn't realize she was 37 years old. Like she is a bucket. And I think she's going to be the difference for the Sun, going forward. Because, I mean, Alyssa Thomas is clearly their best player, but between her, DeWanna Bonner, and then Dejanay Carrington, like, I'm going to start calling her Tylenol because she's the fever killer. She is.
I like it.
Yeah, she's tough. Like, and what I like about them, too, is they clearly have really strong team and chemistry, but their coach and, like, their team, they put an emphasis on defense. Like, a lot of their points came off of transition buckets yesterday and just, asserting their will. And what I will say about the Fever is I'm not going to take away because Caitlin Clark, she's going to end up winning Rookie of the Year. I really still think at the All-Star break, it was easily Angel Reese in my opinion, though. But I will say part of what's benefited Caitlin Clark a lot is, though, having Kelsey Mitchell. Like, I kind of feel bad for Kelsey Mitchell because, in my opinion, she's the best player on the team. Yeah, she's the best player on that team. Like she real talk might end up getting either first team All WNBA or second team All WNBA, but all you seem to hear from her team is Caitlin Clark. So, and also what's interesting about it too is she's a free agent this upcoming offseason. So it's gonna be very interesting to see if Kelsey Mitchell ends up leaving, how good the Fever are even gonna be next year. But I think the Sun are I think they're gonna end up winning that series. I think it's going to be a sweep. They're going to win the next 2 games in a row. And then the next series is the Lynx and the Phoenix Mercury. And huge shout out to Nafisa Collier last night, 38 points. That was her career high. And I'll be honest, they're a sleeper team. Like, I'm not saying they're going to win it all, but like I'm pretty sure they would play the Sun next series, and it's like that could go either way because the Lynx match up well, and it's like, when Nafisa Collier is being aggressive like that, they still have Kayla McBride. Like, they have really good, they have a really balanced team, and they have really strong chemistry. It's like, that's what I love about the WNBA. Like, there are really good teams, but the way things have gone this year, it can honestly go either way. But I think realistically, the Mercury just don't have enough. I mean, like, Brittany Griner is great. Don't get me wrong. She's arguably still the best center in the entire league, but Diana Taurasi's older. And then they didn't get enough from Kalia Cooper last night, in my opinion, to be able to keep that game close. But their point guard, I'm trying to remember her name. She had 30 points too, though. She was going crazy. But the fact that, their point guard had 30 points like that and they still lost, pretty convincingly, it's just, I think going forward, I'm not saying that the Lynx are going to sweep them, but I think Phoenix might get a game, and then I think, of course, the Lynx will ultimately end up winning 3 games.
They don't have an answer for Collier.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. She's another one too. Where going forward, because she's still young, she could easily be MVP next season. Like she'll probably end up finishing 3rd or 4th this year because she had a phenomenal season. But I can just tell too, given how she played for Team USA, like that confidence, it's just translated right over to the second half of the WNBA season. So I think the Lynx are going to end up winning that series, and then. The Liberty, they beat the Dream. I mean, that was to be expected. Pretty convincing win, too. Sabrina Ionescu had a really good game. Brianna Stewart, did Brianna Stewart things. And then I just feel like I feel like they're actually going to make the WNBA Finals again. It could be a repeat, honestly. I think it's going to be a repeat of last year between them and the Aces to kind of just spoil my, long-term prediction. But I think they're going to end up sweeping the Dream. It's just the Dream have good talent, just they're young and they just don't have enough the same level of talent. With Sabrina Ionescu, Courtney Vandersloot, Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones is just like that's a very tough team to beat, and they have a lot of size. And I think what separates them from a lot of teams is they're probably the best 3-point shooting team in the entire playoffs right now, outside of the Lynx. So. I think they're going to end up, winning that series. And then the Aces versus Storm, that was actually the series that I thought was going to, and it still has a chance to be probably the best series in my opinion, the most balanced. Because the Storm have a really good roster with Skylar Diggins, Jewel Lloyd, um, what's it called? The Agumake sister. Like, they have a really good team, and they have Gabby Williams now, so they have a really, solid team on paper. It's just the Aces are going to be the Aces, and that's why I have the Aces back in the finals. I don't see any team being able to shut down Asia Wilson 3 out of 5 games in a given playoff series. So, she's a 3-time MVP winner for a reason, like you were alluding to, and also too, it's just like they have that experience. That's why even too, like if they end up making the finals and ultimately end up playing like the Liberty, I still give the Aces the edge because they're well coached. They're well coached, and then on top of that, it's just like they have that experience. And if they end up winning this year, they'll be the second team to three-peat. The Houston Comets did it back in the day. But I just think it's going to be very tough for any other team to just be able to stop Asia Wilson. 3 out of 5 games, and on top of that, I'm not even taking into account like Jackie Young can start going off. Kelsey Plum can get 25, 30 in a game. Chelsea Gray, like their team is just loaded. And I know they didn't have the best regular season, but it's just like I'm not down the Aces come playoff time. So those are my predictions. How are your predictions looking for these current series right now?
Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I'm not completely well. I'm completely sold on the Aces. I think Chelsea Gray's got to play a little bit better.
I agree.
Even going back to the Olympics where her shot simply was not falling.
Yeah.
And I think in order for them to repeat, they've got to get better play from her.
Yeah.
Kelsey Plum, I think, for that team specifically is the X factor.
Yeah.
I think that there are still going to be games where Chelsea Gray is not. She's just not effective.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw how even in the Olympics, Kelsey Plum came in. I know it was Kelsey Plum came in and actually filled that void because Chelsea can certainly pass the ball, and I know that she can actually shoot.
Yeah.
But this has not been a good year for her coming off of that injury from a shooting perspective.
And Kelsey Plum is also a great defender of like for example, if they match up against the Liberty, like she'll be able to sit there and guard Sabrina Ionescu. So yeah.
Agreed. So those are my takes. I think we're gonna wrap it up and transition to one last thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, two other quick things. So we're gonna have a segment going forward on every podcast episode called "Moving the Needle." So basically, we'll just go through what moved the needle for us this week. So I just have one because one of them was going to be Asia Wilson, but we've already talked about her. But moving the needle for me this week was definitely Shohei Ohtani. He's my favorite baseball player, him and Ellie De La Cruz. But seeing what Shohei's been able to do, man, this is probably arguably one of the single best, if not the best, season that any single player has had in MLB history. Over 50 stolen bases, over 50 home runs. We might not ever see that again. And what's scary about Shohei is he didn't even play pitcher this season. So, he was just designated hitter this year. So, if he can come back, next year, the season after that, and be able to pitch again, I know he got a fat ton of cash this offseason for the Dodgers, but it's looking like they're going to get more than enough on, of a return on investment with Shohei Ohtani. That man, he's special. What moved the needle for you this week, though?
So this is gonna again sound biased for me. Yeah. What moved the needle for me was the Tar Heels had the number 1 ranked basketball player in this weekend, AJ Debonta. AJ Debonta. Tar Heels had him in this weekend for a visit. He is special. I did see that what's the center's name? Oh my gosh. He was just on our team. He graduated. Baycott. Oh my God! I can't believe I forgot Armando Baycott's name.
No, you're fine.
I had a brain freeze there. But AJ Debonta was actually in Hills, and Armando Baycott was there visiting him.
Yeah.
As you guys know, as most guys know, Armando Baycott is like the weapon to recruiting at Carolina, and so they had him. This guy could be a generational pickup for the Tar Heels, and I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
He's really that good. He's actually taller than Armando Bacot, and he has a skill set like a guard.
Yeah.
So he's the number one dude, number one ranked player in the land, and I think that it's kind of a big deal that Carolina got him in this early.
For sure.
And they're making some moves. I also think that what is really not being talked about enough is, as far as moving the needle, is the fact that Carolina didn't get a big man, and everybody thinks they can get a big. They're just simply not a team to be reckoned with. I think that they're going to surprise some people. I think the fact that it shows that they are going to surprise some people because they will actually get a in this weekend.
Yeah.
So that's what moved the needle for me this week.
That's good. And then the last thing we'll have is we'll start doing this going forward too. We'll just do our predictions for the Monday night football games tonight and then the Thursday night football game. So the 2 Monday night football games tonight, and I'll keep it brief because I could keep talking for another 30 minutes. But we have the Bengals and the Commanders. I want to take the Commanders in that game, but I'm gonna take Joe Shiesty and the Bengals. I think Jaden Daniels will have a good game though. I think this will be like a prime time opportunity for him to show what he can do. But I just think ultimately, especially given the fact the way the Bengals lost last week, I think they're gonna come out establish their dominance. I feel like they're gonna win that game. Then what do you think is gonna happen in that game? Then I'll get to the next.
Oh yeah, I've got the Bengals.
Yeah,
I definitely have the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
I think Burrow is due for a really, really good game, and I think it'll be that game.
Sounds good. And then the Bills and the Jaguars, kind of similar to the Commanders. I want to say the Jags, but the Bills have looked really good. And I feel like what's going to be the difference is I feel like they're going to be able to establish the run early with James Cook, and I feel like that's just going to free up the offense for Josh Allen. And their defense has actually played really good so far. And I also think this is a time where they can start trying to establish, chemistry with like Keon Coleman's, those type of players, because they basically have a whole new wide receiving core. But I think they'll have enough to get it done tonight against the Jags.
Yeah, I don't have much confidence in Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been, he's been pedestrian so far. I just don't. They've got the talent, but I don't have confidence in him, and so because of that, I'm going to go with the.
Yeah, and also too, I thought an X factor in that game would have been Evan Ingram, but he's hurt right now for them too. So yeah, I completely.
Yeah, I'm well aware he's on my fantasy football team. I had to go second.
Yeah.
To fill in for him. So yeah, I don't have confidence in Trevor Lawrence right now.
And then the last game, I know you were kind of alluding to this earlier in the podcast, but it's the Cowboys and the Giants on Thursday night. I don't think I'm gonna shock you. I think I'm gonna take the Giants in that game. I know it's a rivalry game, but I just feel like the Cowboys have too many unanswered questions right now with their roster. I don't feel like they'll be able to establish the run nor be able to stop the run. So I'm gonna take the Giants. Especially I feel like if they come out and establish the run early, I think they'll end up winning that game.
Neighbors.
Yeah.
They have no one who can stop him.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be the difference maker. Cowboys are just it's what they do.
Yeah.
It's what they do every year. Come out, they win a game, and then they play like gangbusters, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's our year, it's our year." It's never going to be your year again.
Facts.
Jerry Jones is the owner. It's never going to be your year.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Giants beating the Cowboys on Thursday night.
Sounds good. So we literally both agreed on every single matchup.
Which is rare.
Yeah,
which is very rare. Yes.
But yeah, so I think that concludes our podcast episode for the weekend. Going forward, we'll be releasing our podcast episodes every Tuesday. Just be on the lookout for that. And that was a fun one.
Yep, it was. Thanks everybody for listening. Next time on podcast.
Take care.